So in this section, we're going to talk about ionic bonds. Ionic bonds tend to form between metals and nonmetals. Metals can give up those electrons really easily. Nonmetals just need a couple of them. And so the nonmetals will generally take a few electrons from the metals, which makes one element positive, one element negative, and they'll be attracted by the electric force. Metals can easily give up those electrons, become positively charged. Nonmetals easily gain electrons, become negatively charged. When they transfer them, they form ions, and then the atoms get attracted that way. These are called ionic compounds. We're going to talk more about these a little bit in the next section, but I do want to mention one thing here. Sometimes groups of atoms held together by covalent bonds can sometimes gain or lose electrons just like single elements can. So they're all stuck together, but one of their electrons or two of their electrons gets away. We call these polyatomic ions. There are some really common ones and ones that pop up in words and things that you've heard. Ammonium is very close to ammonia, which it probably comes from ammonia. Chlorate, cyanide should be a familiar word to you at least. Carbonate, sulfate, phosphate. These are very common polyatomic ions that form things like sulfate gives you sulfuric acid and things like that. And so there's some common names that we use for these and different names that we use for these different elements. So you just kind of want to keep an eye out as you're naming things for these particular elements to make sure that you give them their appropriate name. In the next section, we'll talk a little bit more about how these ionic compounds work and how you put them together. And then we'll talk a little bit about naming different compounds towards the end.